Well, I can give you mine. I'm totally committed for the United States to absolutely be involved with Ukraine, helping them every way they can to defend themselves and fighting for the freedoms that we all hold so dear. It's one of those situations, pay me now or pay me later. And the bottom line, if we don't keep investing in helping them develop their own weapon systems and helping them basically defend themselves, and Russia would prevail, the cost is going to be enormous to the whole world, especially to the United States, and we can't have that happen.
What is the level of need in your understanding
Well,
right now? What they need from us?
Well, we're basically supplying them, but we're going to basically supply ourselves too. We're not going to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. We want to make sure that we have what we're giving them to help defend themselves. We have to replenish for ourselves so that we can maintain the readiness that we need. That's really what this is all about.
And with the situation, obviously, in the House, how does that complicate?
I'm hoping they come to their senses. I hope they understand what we're in is just basically we are the freedom fighters for democracy around the world. We're the superpower of the world. And if we can't basically help a country that's willing to fight, sacrifice their own people and shed their own blood, and basically neutralize to a certain extent and show the vulnerabilities of a major obstruction we have in major adversaries such as Russia, then God help us all. I hope they come to their senses and realize that.
And do you think that the House should potentially try to elect a speaker?
No, I'm not. I'd be the last person to give the House advice.
Yeah, right. So the air defense is really important because obviously that's what protects their civilian population. So it's incredibly important. They've got the Patriot batteries. They're also interested in Iron Dome as well, just because of the different capabilities. So we're looking at all of that. And then obviously looking at, their air capabilities too. As you know, we're training their pilots on the F-16 aircraft. And so, again, that's an important part. And, we're very focused on what do we need to do, not only to make sure that Ukraine's in a position to win, not just have a stalemate, right, but also protect the civilian population.
And while trying to do all of that, now the House does not have a speaker. We don't know how long they will be speakerless. They must unable to pass legislation. Obviously, it looks like this will be passed in the Senate here to pass a separate Ukraine supplemental.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about the fate of that announcement?
So I think one of the things we've really got to look at doing, and we were already looking at it on the CR, and that is combining something on border security with assistance for Ukraine. And I think that's a way to bring more people together and say, okay, these are both important. We've got to stop that flow at the southern border. Obviously, assisting Ukraine is important. Let's see if we can't work something out and get a big bipartisan majority to do both.
There have been some Republicans on the House side, at least, and some of them who are considering running for Speaker that have said they don't want to send any more Ukraine aid at all. I mean, are you concerned that you might run into a buzzsaw over there if the new Speaker becomes somebody who says we're going to cut it all off?
Well, see, that's why I say I think we have to look at something like border security combined with the Ukrainian aid as a way to bring people together. There's some, that's a way to get, I think, a bipartisan majority. Now, there'll be other ideas as well, but that's certainly one that I think we need to work on. As I say, we were looking at that in the CR. Ended up not going there, but there was a lot of good work done. And certainly, if we can, we've got to get something on border security. We just have to. So I think that brings more people to the equation.
Well, this morning we had a very critical hearing on Ukrainian air defense and the need for our assistance to Ukraine at this critical time. It's very clear to me that we need to act as soon as we can to provide that assistance and support for our ally. It's important for our national security. It is important for them. It's important for our allies and for our what our message to the world is. I and my counterparts are working really hard to come up with a package as soon as possible. Congress needs to act.
No, yeah, I mean, I continue to believe it's in our national interest to be on the Ukraine side of this conflict. Both are, I think it would be devastating to the reliability of the United States, to allies all over the world. If we were just to abandon Ukraine, I think it would reinforce the Chinese narrative that is used against us, that we're unreliable, we're a hollowed-out power. I also think it's unrealistic to believe that we're going to be able to continue to provide $30 to $60 billion every 6 months. This effort has gotten less popular, not more popular, for a variety of reasons. So it's important for us to determine, to lay out not just what our national interest is. This has to be driven entirely by the national interest of the United States. As horrifying as what Russia has done is, it has to be driven by the national interest of the United States. And then we need to figure out how can we help Ukraine in the way that furthers our national interest that we can afford, both in cost and also in opportunity costs. Because every time you're building a weapon system to be used in Ukraine, you're potentially not dedicating that production to some weapon system that would be more useful in an Indo-Pacific conflict with China, which I think is the looming threat. So I don't think we can walk away from Ukraine, but I also don't think that this policy that some believe that we're going to do as much as it takes for as long as it takes is either wise or realistic. And that's hopefully the debate we're going to have here in Congress over the next few weeks to try to get something done. But this is not, even if we provided the funding they asked for, they'll be back again early next year asking for more. I don't know how easy that's going to be. It's going to be even harder at that point.
Senator Grimm previously said he wants just like one big bill to get through the 24 election and let the American people have a referendum of what they want that way. Is that something you'd be open to?
Well, I don't even know how you can do the one. I mean, I think the idea is the right one, which is you're not going to take multiple bites at this apple. That said, the way to understand this is we provide Ukraine weapons that we have, that are in our stocks. Okay, that just doesn't take money. That takes authority, and they have it. The problem is they won't provide weapons. Okay, if you need 5 airplanes, you're willing to give them 1 or 2 of them if you know the money is there to restock those 1 or 2 back. That's where the money comes into play. So what Ukraine has needed in this war has changed as the war has changed. Initially, it was about keeping the Russians from taking Kyiv. Now it's something very different. You know, a potential or an ongoing Ukrainian offensive requires different levels of assistance, different weaponry. So it's they can't. The important thing we have to ask ourselves is, okay, where are we 18 months from now? Where are we 12 months from now? And I don't know if you can get an answer to that question and fund it, because it's not clear we know what weapon systems will be needed a year from now or 6 months from now or 9 months from now. And that has to be part of the balancing act between that and our national interest. We know that the most dangerous situation in the world long term is a potential conflict with China in the Indo-Pacific. The weapon systems we need to be making to address that are different than the ones that we're dedicating to Ukraine. And if production for Ukraine comes at the expense of that production, that's a big problem in the long term. So all that has to be weighed in the context, even among supporters of Ukraine, as I have been and continue to be. But it can't. To basically say we're going to give as much as we can for as long as we can is not a realistic position to take. I think this effort's going to be less popular 6 months from now. We've already seen the trend line. So we have to be realistic about it. If you really want to help Ukraine, we need to be able to help them in a way that we can sustain.
And then looking at the situation in the House, how does that complicate things? They don't have a speaker, so they can't even move anything.
Well, they'll have a speaker at some point, and we'll move from there. I don't think it impacts how votes go down on this issue. But well, then that'll be a problem, you know. But that's, I think that given all these other needs we have, where the people point to the border, they point to all these other challenges we have, and not to mention the threat from China in the Indo-Pacific, it is not unreasonable to argue that maybe our priority should be somewhere else. Now, I could argue that has to be balanced with the damage, and we do have a national interest in Ukraine. So, but you know, people come up on different sides of that issue. I don't. But I'm not going to speculate on who the next speaker is. I don't think anybody can tell you that. No matter what, there'll have to be someone in charge over there, and at that point, that's who we'll work with.
So would you tell Zelensky at this point that you can't necessarily rely on or count on the guarantee of help from the U.S.?
I mean, I think President Zelensky is aware that the U.S. is a vibrant republic. We have different points of views and opinions. You know, these issues at the end of the day are not a decision for one person to make. I mean, there's going to have to be, the elected representatives in this country are going to have to debate this and talk through it and hopefully arrive at a solution that's good for America first and foremost, but also is supportive of Ukraine, because I do think that's in our national interest.